We did a poll to find the next topic for a long video, and the overwhelming winner was Sorrell Booke. Thank you, by the way, for voting 10,000 votes. Sorrell Booke, better known as Boss Hogg. Yes, that Boss Hogg from Hazard County. Just amazing. So many of you know that this guy was way more than just a bumbling, corrupt, inept boss of Hazard County who seemingly every week was outwitted by those rascally Duke boys. He and his partner in crime, Roscoe P. Coltrane, another war hero by the way, were always coming up just a little bit short. But for those of you hearing this for the first time, buckle up. Do I have a story to tell you? So we've been doing a regular series of videos on Hollywood heroes, the men and women of film and TV who served their country during wartime. There's a link in the description box to the videos. They're hugely popular because so many of the people that we admire from the movies and TV also served in combat, and they rarely, if ever, spoke about it. People like Russell Johnson, the professor from Gilligan's Island. He flew 44 combat missions, earned her Purple Heart. Art Carney of the Honeymooners, another guy, received their Purple Heart. Betty White and Bea Arthur, two of the Golden Girls, served in the Army and Marines respectively during the war. As you know, the list is endless. Check out the videos. We'll be doing volume 3 soon. But the person who's received the most interest by far has been Sorrell Booke, Boss Hogg, and it's not even close. We did a short on him, and to date, it's received more comments than anything we've ever done, and we've had some shorts that have topped over 5 million views. And the consistent theme in the comments has been, I had no idea. And the second most consistent theme has been, don't judge a book by its cover. Okay, so that's more of a pun than it is a theme, but you get my drift. Look, I think it's the shock value. Sorrell was way more accomplished and frankly way more complex than we knew of based on his most memorable character, Boss Hogg. So let me start from the beginning with Sorrell. I really wish I had Waylon Jennings as the balladeer for this part, but alas, he's passed away. Stick around to the end of the video, by the way. I have a very cool Waylon Jennings story that I have to share with you. Trust me, it's amazing. Stick around. The word genius gets thrown around a lot, way too much in fact, but in the case of Sorrell Booke, it really does apply. He was a legitimate genius. The guy graduated. He graduated from Columbia University, one of the most prestigious and difficult schools in the country, at the age of 19. Most people at that point are either wrapping up high school or entering their freshman year, and he's already earned a degree in drama. During his time at Columbia, he was a very accomplished Shakespearean actor, and he immediately goes on to receive a master's degree from the Yale School of Drama, the premier program for serious thespians, by the time he's 21. I mean, put yourself in his shoes at that point. You could only imagine the last thing he thought he'd be remembered for would be a buffoonish TV character, but we'll get to that in a second. So he's 21 years old, has degrees in drama from both Columbia and Yale, and he's already well regarded and making a name for himself in the stage community. And what does Sorrell Booke decide to do? He joins the United States Army. You heard me correct. Sorrell Booke, degrees in tow from Columbia and Yale in drama of all things, decides to join the Army. It seems like an odd choice, but there's a reason for it. The Korean War has just begun, and there was a need for counterintelligence officers who were fluent in Korean and Chinese, who could help with translations, interrogations, misinformation, counterintelligence operations, and a whole bunch of other classified work. Well, the part I haven't told you yet is that Sorrell Booke was also fluent in 12 languages, and as he put it, semi-fluent or conversational in 6 other languages. Let that sink in for a moment. The guy spoke somewhere between 12 and 18 languages. I mean, I struggle to master English, as all of you know, and he's speaking 12 languages. And those languages included Russian, Chinese, and Korean, among others, which came in really handy during the Cold War, and especially during the Korean War. Look, mastering more than a few languages is really, really hard. Being fluent in a dozen or so languages isn't only off the charts insanely difficult, but it probably, I have no evidence for this, just my opinion, it probably made him one of a handful of people on the planet at the time who was fluent in 12 or more languages, particularly some really difficult languages. What made this so impressive in addition to his flat-out brilliance, is that he decided to put his extraordinary skill to work for his country in becoming a counterintelligence officer during the Korean War. He quite literally could have done anything, he was that brilliant, and yet he chose to serve his country at the onset of the Cold War, a time when the world was a pretty scary place. Remember, the Soviets had just acquired the atomic bomb a few years earlier. There was a hot war in Korea that most Americans really didn't understand. The Red Scare in the US was just beginning to take off. Our country was on edge, and there was still fatigue from World War II, remember. But Sorrell Booke answered the call when he didn't have to, and that may be the most impressive thing about the guy. This wasn't World War II, which almost everyone felt compelled to be a part of. This was the Korean War, a much different situation. And for a man with this many options, this brilliant, to put his life and career on hold to serve his country is one of the most badass things I've ever heard of. Now, sadly, much of his work during the Korean War remains classified. There's really not much in the public domain about what specifically it did, other than he specialized in counterintelligence. I really hope someday that his file is declassified so we could better understand what he did during the Korean War. If any of you have any more insights, please drop a note in the comment section. I'd love to know more about it. And of course, Sorrell, like so many of these greatest generation heroes, never ever spoke a word of his service. In fact, when anybody asked him about being in the Army or serving in the Korean War, he'd simply answer, "I'm just an ordinary guy from Buffalo, New York," which is so consistent with so many of the heroes from that generation. True heroes don't brag, they don't preen, and they didn't talk. And that was Sorrell Booke. What's so fascinating about Sorrell isn't just his service during the Korean War and his true genius, but also his career arc. That's the other comment we see a lot of in that short video. In addition to the shock of him being a genius and a war hero, is the lament that he's known for such a buffoonish character in Boss Hogg. Again, this was a guy who was Yale educated, a Shakespearean actor, supremely intelligent, and yet what we remember him for today is Boss Hogg. On some level, that had to be pretty maddening for him, or at least a little bit embarrassing, but if it was, he never ever let on about it. So many actors that are identified with one character tend to denigrate or downplay that role, or even run away from that character. Think Carroll O'Connor with Archie Bunker, Robert Reed as Mike Brady, even Jason Alexander as George to some extent, because they don't want to be solely remembered for that, or sometimes they don't even love the character or even like the character. That character is beneath them, or not really who they are. But that was never the case with Sorrell Booke. He played one of the most ridiculous characters in TV history, and I dare you to find a quote from him denigrating Boss Hogg or the Dukes of Hazzard. You won't find it because it doesn't exist. I think that speaks volumes about the man's character. And we get that question a lot in our short on Sorrell. Why did he choose to play this quirky, cartoonish character on the Dukes of Hazzard? Wouldn't he have been happier playing serious roles befitting his classical training? Well, I can't answer that. He really didn't speak much about his career choices. My guess, this is just a guess, is that he took the role because he was a prolific working character actor. You know, he was never a leading man. He didn't quite have those looks, but he kept himself busy on TV and on the stage with all sorts of roles. You probably remember seeing him on MASH or Columbo, Gunsmoke, The Rockford Files. He was on like a million shows. You may not have always recognized him. He actually wore a fat suit as Boss Hogg, but he was on TV seemingly everywhere. And there's no way that he could have known that the Dukes of Hazzard would be a smash hit and run for as long as it did, and that he would sort of be the breakout star on the show. The show wouldn't have been nearly as entertaining without him. And the thing that most people remember about the Dukes of Hazzard is the car, the General Lee, Boss Hogg, and of course Daisy, or Daisy Dukes. And that's part of the reason why our short video has so many views and comments, because the man was so much more than that. He was a genius, a linguistic savant, a classically trained Shakespearean actor, a patriot and a war hero, and a reliable character actor who happened to be a big hit with Boss Hogg. Like so many of the Hollywood heroes that we profiled, it would have been nice to have known all this while the show was going on. It certainly would have made me think differently about Boss Hogg and the Dukes of Hazzard. God bless this extraordinary man and patriot. So I promised a quick Waylon Jennings story. Here goes. Did you know that Waylon was part of Buddy Holly's band, and on that fateful night when his buddy's plane crashed with Richie Valens and Big Bopper, he was supposed to be on it, but he gave his seat away to Richie Valens, who was feeling under the weather. In their last conversation, Buddy jokingly told Waylon, "I hope your bus breaks down en route to the next gig," for which Waylon quickly retorted, "Well, I hope your plane crashes." And of course, we know the rest of that story. Waylon said he lived with the survivor's guilt the rest of his life. Just so sad. If you enjoyed this video, and even if you didn't, please hit like and subscribe, and leave in the comments your thoughts on other videos you'd like to see. Till next time, I'm Nick Ragone.